So again, I'm Tyler, the founder and CEO of Retirable. We started this business to make sure that everyone gets access to professional financial advice, and part of that is making sure that we're helping people with all of their anxieties as they live in retirement. And unfortunately, you know, fraud and scams are really top of mind. So we'll take a look at a few different areas and how we can protect ourselves. Um, so I think one of the scariest things, and you see new reports almost every week, it feels like, senior fraud, especially, has been running rampant. And the average losses are a pretty big drag on the overall economy, not to mention how disastrous it can be for the individuals who get predatory fraud. And, these numbers are really big, but I think with a lot of the fraud and scams is the bigger issue is the emotional damage it can cause, knowing that you've been taken advantage of, knowing that your hard-earned savings has now been lost. But I think one of the big things to remember, and I always start with this, is everyone can be affected. We're talking specifically about some of the predatory attacks that target older Americans, but everyone gets scammed all the time, it feels like. Even my girlfriend recently fell victim to one. Fortunately, we caught it in time, but it's nothing to be ashamed of. We're constantly being inundated with fake emails, fake text messages, fake phone calls. And it's really easy in the day-to-day of your life to be clicking the wrong link, something like that, but nothing to be ashamed of. But it's good to know the best practices to keep in mind as we're out navigating this digital world, to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, and how to stop things before they can get very serious. So why older Americans? So unfortunately, the individuals who are running a lot of these scams know who to target, because they know who will be most susceptible. And unfortunately, and I'm going to speak in a lot of general terms here, you know, a lot of a lot of seniors aren't as technologically adept. They haven't grown up with the internet from preschool, right? So they might not recognize or be confused by a lot of the ways that these scams get in front of people. They also, are generally more well off, right? They've been working their whole careers. They get to retirement. They have this nest egg, and they have a lot to lose, right? And unfortunately, that's the worst time to be losing any sort of financial assets. And then they don't know who they're calling or who they're targeting, but they know that in general, there are more people who are cognitively impaired when they're living in retirement, especially older seniors, and those are the ones they really want to start to take advantage of. And a sad part of the lives of a lot of seniors is that they are somewhat isolated, right? They aren't going into work every day and have coworkers that they're bouncing questions off of, stuff like that. So people are isolated, are taken advantage of more because they don't have that support network to help prevent these types of frauds and scams. So the number one thing that scammers are going to try and do is get access to your private information. And we talk quite a bit with our clients at Retirable about, how to protect this personal information from getting out there. A lot of it's outside of our control, unfortunately. I'm willing to bet that at some point everyone here's social security number has gotten hacked in some way, right? We see the headlines all the time. A lot of that's out of our control. But the more that they know about you, the more dangerous that information being out there is. So, when we think about putting our dates of birth on Facebook and LinkedIn and those types of platforms, we're just giving these hackers, more ammunition to go try and steal information from us. So that's one of the things that we'll talk about, and we need to be, really cautious of whenever we're putting that information out into the world. And they're going to take that information and figure out ways to get money from you, essentially. And that can come in a lot of forms. We always like to think that it's some guy sitting behind a big computer monitor with ones and zeros on it, and he's hacking our email addresses. But that's not typically what happens. And I think you all know this because you've probably been contacted at least once. They're going to say, hey, I know that Tony in DC, he's got a grandkid. So I'm going to call him and try and get his information. Tony, I'm just using you as an example because I recognize you from last time. But they're gonna try and use that information that's publicly available to get your assets and income somehow. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on any single one of these. I already called one of them out, but looking at this list, has anyone here ever been targeted by one of these scams that target older adults? Well, I asked this question one time, and we spent the rest of the presentation talking about some of the romance scams that are out there and how they get in front of people. But if anyone wants to jump in and share a story, feel free. All right. So looking at, so we're talking quite a bit so far about, frauds and scams that are very clearly just a way to try and get your money, right? Those are really straightforward. Somebody's calling, they're asking you to wire them some money before you can get your lottery winnings or something like that. But there are a lot of adjacent scams that are out there that we often tell our clients to guard themselves against. And a lot of them really target people who are living in retirement. It's a period in your life where you have a lot of anxieties and worries about running out of money and what's the economy going to do. You don't have the ability to go back to work to earn more income. So some of the big ones that we see are the gold and precious metal scams. So someone will reach out. They'll typically have some sort of sense of urgency for you to buy something. The economy is going to collapse. You got to sock your money away into something safe. It's got to be gold. Just buy these coins. We'll hold on to them for you. And what you find on those is, they're somewhat legitimate, right? They are a financial product that they're selling you. But when you want to get your money back, there's a lot of red tape, a lot of discounts, a lot of fees that you have to give up. So that's one that we see quite often. It's less common than it used to be, but cryptocurrencies, we've seen a lot of predatory offerings out there. And, these are always targeting the get rich quick. And it's not just, hey, go buy a Bitcoin and have it sit there. They're saying, hey, wrap this Bitcoin in Ethereum. And they're using all this complex language. And they tell you you're going to get a big return back. And my advice here is whenever it sounds too good to be true, it definitely is. Another one that we see quite often are really complex annuity products. Annuities in general, very good products, especially if they're sold by someone who knows what they're talking about. But oftentimes, because annuities carry really high commissions, individuals will go sell those products thinking they're doing good, right? It's nothing nefarious, but the client doesn't actually know what they're buying. So whenever you're presented with one of those, especially if it sounds too good to be true, try and get a second opinion and make sure that you have somebody looking over that fine print so you understand what you're purchasing and what you're going to get out of it. And then finally, the Facebook get rich quick schemes. We find a lot of these. It's pretty common that we'll get a call from a client and they're like, hey, what do you think about this? There's a class I found on Facebook that will teach me how to be a day trader. And this guy made 1,000% return in a month, right? You hear that and you're wondering why this guy that's making so much money day trading is offering this to everyone else. So a lot of these, you really got to take a step back and, why are they putting it out there? Why are they charging you for this information up front? So whenever they're asking you to pay for something, whenever there's a high sense of urgency, whenever it's really complex, make sure that you bring in somebody to get a second opinion on that offering.
Tyler, it looks like we got Ron, Linda, Richard sharing some of their stories with different scams as well in the chat.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys sharing. This is nothing to be ashamed of. It's really common. And, as I mentioned, I got a call from my mom one day. She had a problem with her I can't say the name because I have one in my house, but an Alexa. And she would click some link somewhere, and next thing you know, they're calling her saying that she's been hacked and that she has to like pay them money. It's really easy to just click the wrong link on this stuff. All right. So I touched on some of these, but some of them are really obvious to us. Like we've been around long enough in the early days of the internet. I know everybody here remembers it. You had all those like the Nigerian prince scams where, hey, you just got to wire us some money and you're going to be rich, right? So those took off, and now I think that we've been around long enough. It's easy to spot those, and you can see some of the current scams out there kind of following that same path. The sweepstakes one, hey, you won, you just have to send us $2,000 or make a payment, right? They're trying to get your bank account number, get that first deposit, and then try and milk you for more. The sense of urgency, right? Especially if it's a financial services product. No one who's a fiduciary or cares about your best interest should be trying to sell you something in a high pressure way. So if you're ever told you have to do this by a certain deadline, the warning bells should be going off in your head. The scare tactics, that's kind of their bread and butter, right? Grandkids in trouble, the economy is going to collapse, that type of stuff. You really got to start, looking out for anybody who's trying to scare you into making a decision. And then AI. So we've all seen the headlines. It's this coming wave. It's going to disrupt all these jobs. And one of the first things that I thought of that scared me the most is, hey, if this gets good at impersonating people, I could be AI right now. I could be, trying to sell you a financial product at the end of this, and it's not really me, right? So that's something that we'll need to continue to monitor. We haven't seen too many yet. There's a lot of phone voice duping going on, and for anybody who's on a highly presentation, if you get a call from a number you don't recognize, or even the caller ID looks to be legit, you should be Googling, making sure you have the right number. If it's from your grandkid, go and call the actual number before you make any decisions. But that's one that's really scary. How adept are they going to get in terms of impersonating people? So the one that I almost fell victim to, because I'm vulnerable enough to share as well, is the UPS. I got a text saying, "Hey, UPS, we couldn't deliver your package," and then it started asking me for all this information, and I figured out pretty quick that I'd fallen victim to clicking the wrong link, which is really easy when you're busy at work and you're not thinking about it. So text messages, emails, phone calls, social media, they're going to be targeting you across all of these channels. So emails, I think everyone. I would assume everyone on this call is pretty adept at spotting some of these nefarious emails. The thing that I like to do first and foremost is look at the address that email is coming from. If it's not at chase.com and there's something else layered in there, we probably know that it's not something that's legitimate. Phone calls, this is again, phone calls and texts, go back to the true source number and make sure that you're being called. Don't give out any information on the first call, right? If there's something you do need a handle for, a chase or something, you can call them and get connected to the right person. You don't have to make any decisions. You don't have to give any information out on that first contact. And then social media, keep your guard up at all time. Anyone can post anything. Fake charities are definitely one that, it's really sad that people are taking advantage of something where they're pulling at somebody's heartstrings and it's just for them to get rich. So, keep an eye out. Don't give money straight away without doing any research on the subject.
Looks like Tony, did you have a question?
I did. I thought that the one test that you had, if it's too good to be true, it most probably is too good to be true. Is it another test that and this could be individual, if it's too complicated for you, Tony, to understand, then it might be a scam, and it's not worth, Tony, for you to try to understand it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. My brain goes to some of our clients often think that they own a certain financial product, and they start working with us, and they ask us to take a look at what they own, and turns out it's an annuity. Turns out their money's locked up. Turns out there's different riders they're paying for, and they had no idea what they actually had purchased. And that's kind of a sad situation when they can't access the funds that they need, or it's not doing what it needs to do for their financial life. So I think that's a good rule of thumb. Whenever I tell my team, whenever it takes us 2 hours to figure out how financial product work, it's probably too complicated as a group of CFPs trying to figure it out, that it shouldn't be sold to a client, right? Everything that you buy should be simple and easy to understand. So I love that.
Tyler, we had another question come in here about not saying yes on a phone call that might be possibly fraudulent. Sometimes people will call and ask you a simple question, or even ask you, is this Tyler End? And that scammer can use that recording as your consent for, like, an example, like authorizing your bank to do something. Is this a scam that you've seen in real life? And how would you advise people to be on the lookout for this or avoid that in the future?
Yeah, this is a tough one. And, there's a generality stereotype that older Americans are more likely to pick up the phone, right? It's something that comes up in like polling with elections and stuff like that. And it's likely true. And, they do call and test that they have your right phone number. And even if you don't say anything, if you pick up that phone and it's a number you don't recognize, and they know that you picked up and there's another human on the other end, they're probably like, all right, great, I got John's phone number now. So that's one more piece of information that I have to kind of piece this together to try and scam him. So yeah, the AI one, we haven't come across anybody whose voice has been duped yet, but my guess is that kind of stuff is coming. Yeah, so along those same lines, we've talked about a few of these: sense of urgency, fear tactics, don't make rash decisions. If you feel pressured into making a decision or giving out some information, tell them you call them back, Google the number, talk to a friend or family, call that grandkid directly or their parents, that kind of stuff. Avoid alternate payment. So this is another calling card of a lot of these scams is, they aren't using any real bank accounts, right? They want you to Zelle $1,000 or Venmo or something like that. No legitimate financial company with any sort of offer would be asking you to do anything like that. And a lot of times, they want you to initiate that first payment. That money's gone, but now they know you've got this bank account, you have assets. They're going to try and keep milking that from you. And then, if somebody's getting angry on the other end, that's another reason to take a break and hang up that call. And if it's a legitimate issue, you'll be able to get back in front of it. And then fake caller ID is tough. They've gotten really good in the technology to have it show up and say, hey, this is Chase. I don't know why I'm picking on Chase Bank today. But it'll say Chase Bank on your caller ID, but it might not be the right number, right? So you can't trust that. And unfortunately, there aren't a lot of ways right now for us to, fix that technology and have those fake caller IDs pop up. So something to always keep an eye on. Don't just trust that the caller ID is legitimate.
Tyler?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
They even can co-opt legitimate phone numbers. I'm a physician and I was called about 9 months ago. First, they woke me up early in the morning. So of course you're more off guard, you're half asleep. And they were posing a scam that's been running around in Massachusetts for physicians, involving the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA. We all have DEA numbers that certify us to prescribe certain classes of medications. So they said that somebody was prescribing illegally under my DEA number. And one of the things he said to me, which was very interesting, is when I started getting doubtful about this, he said, look at our caller ID number. It is the DEA phone number. And he was absolutely right. I looked it up. I Googled it. They co-opted the legitimate Drug Enforcement Agency phone number, which, I hung up on them pretty soon after that and called them up. And then I also called up the Mass Medical Association and found out that this has been a scam that's been running rampant among physicians.
Wow,
So now they can put a legitimate phone number in the caller ID.
that's terrifying.
Crazy.
And yeah, that's awful. Be on the lookout for that for sure. And Tyler, we have another question in here around landlines. It seems like landlines are less and less these days, but mostly always spam or possible scammers. The question here is a simple one. Is it time to disconnect it? What are your thoughts on that?
Oof, I went back and forth with my mom for years on this one. I know it, there's pros and cons on both sides. When we think about what I talked about earlier, where they're trying to piece together all this information about you, they call a landline, it's registered to a house. Now they know house, you live there, they have that phone number. It's just another data point that they have on you. And some of that stuff they can always kind of piece together, especially with residences. It's nice to have a second phone on hand if there ever is an emergency. You can cell phones down, whatever it is, and you want to have that safety valve there. But I think more and more people are starting to disconnect because that publicly available number is always going to be out there. I'm not going to tell you to get rid of it if that's what you're asking, but it's a personal decision.
I do think too there's a budgeting and spending plan side of that story too. If it's not something that's adding to your budget, might be a good line item to get rid of to spend in more lifestyle areas. One other question here, just while we're on the subject, are landlines more safe or encrypted than cell phones? Do you have an answer on that or any sort of insight there?
No insight. I know one of the nice things about cell phones is you can install some apps that help with blocking robocalls, and sometimes they're picking up on scam calls, and those work for a while typically, and then the scammers figure out a way to get around it. But those are nice to have. So no, I don't think there's anything encrypted that helps with landlines.
Great. We have a few more questions here, but let's hold those to the end and keep going.
Sure. We've actually touched on a lot of these. I don't think we spent much time because I'm guessing a lot of you guys are already pretty good at spotting those emails. Don't click the links that come through unless you know who's sending it, why they're sending it, and it's supposed to be there. That goes with attachments as well. So don't download those unless you know why it's there. Two-factor authentication. We should all be starting to get really good at this. I know it can feel like a hassle, but it's a bigger hassle trying to piece together how you lost some money to somebody or how they got into your bank account. So set it up, either text messages, phone calls, authenticator app. There should be two pieces of information that you give whenever you're signing in, especially for those financial accounts. And then, it's really prevalent, all these scams and fraud. So authorities are constantly being inundated, but it helps to report this stuff because they'll start to see patterns and stuff like that. So make sure that you report anything especially if you start to go down and are getting scammed. And I'm going to just spend 2 seconds here talking about Retirable. As a lot of you know by now, we're focused on retirement income, financial wellness for people 60 plus. We match you up with a financial advisor. We help manage your investment accounts, personalized, but we are always thinking holistically about how else we're able to help our clients. And one of the things I wanted to point out is we offer all of our clients a free fraud and identity theft monitoring with $1 million identity theft insurance, because we know that this is a very big risk to our clients' financial future. So something for you guys to be looking at if you're working with a different financial advisor is making sure you have that type of protection. And one of the things that I like, and I'm not putting this up here as an advertisement for Retirable, but we kind of go into the office and we think about this as we're able to deliver a second and third line of defense against these frauds and scams. So first and foremost will be you always, and that's the most important one, and staying on top of new ways they're trying to reach out to you. But if you have a financial advisor and you have that fraud credit monitoring, those types of products, those can help quite a bit. And, one of the things I think about, we had a client, talk to her once a month, all of a sudden, and we knew how much she spent it on a monthly basis. All of a sudden she was asking for $10,000 that we hadn't talked about. And, she was very curt, just called in, asked for the money. We did our check. It was actually her on the line. And then, it didn't pass the sniff test. So we called back and we were like, hey, what's going on? This wasn't in your financial plan. Can you tell me any more information about why you need this money? And she had actually fallen prey to one of the grandkid scams. Somebody had reached out, said her son needed money, or grandkid needed money. And we were able to stop that. We were able to work with her on how to untangle it. So, you should have a team behind you for all of this. So we'd be happy to help, obviously, but you should open those lines of communications with anybody who, is helping manage your bank accounts, wealth accounts, etc.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say, Tyler, I think that's a great point to have somebody in your corner. We have a couple questions here around that. I'll let you finish what you were about to say, but then we'll kick it over to that.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna thank everybody for having me here today and sharing stories. I know that's can be tough to do. It's human nature to feel embarrassed if you get taken advantage of, but we all do, and it's they're relentless. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. But yeah, happy to answer some more questions.
Great. I'll kind of read down the list here. We had a question here from Linda. She says she has ongoing credit monitoring with IDX, and was recently told that a large data breach happened in July that revealed some of her personal information and showing up on the quote dark web, 12 incidents according to IDX. She's not sure what that is and what she should do with that. What would you advise somebody in her condition here to do next?
Yeah, those are scary emails to get. I've gotten those a few times now, but unfortunately, there's not too much we can do about that, but we can proactively take steps to protect ourselves. So first and foremost, change those passwords, set up two-factor authentication. Just because they have your social security number and maybe your password from a different website, you can protect all of your accounts by adding that security feature if you've not yet done so. And make sure you've got that credit and monitoring going. Read those alerts when they come in your email. Make sure that no new credit lines have been opened, that kind of stuff. Those are really classic ways to that they're going to use that information to try and get money out of you.
Yeah, and following up here on another one from Terry, I keep getting emails telling me thank you for your purchase for things that they have not purchased. Probably something to do with phishing here. I keep just deleting them, but I wonder, is there something else that I should be doing about this? She's keeping up with her credit card and bank statements to make sure there's no charges. Anything else she can do? Sounds like she's in pretty good shape there with what she's doing already. Yeah,
ignore them. I mean, check your credit card, bank statements, that kind of stuff. My guess, as JT mentioned, they're phishing. There might be a link in there, something for you to log into your Amazon account that's not actually Amazon. You give them that password and then they're off and running. So sounds like you're on top of things there.
Yeah, it just seems like all of a sudden I'm just getting tons of them. Like, where is this coming from? So,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Somehow you got on a list and they're all sharing that around for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
The one,
Thank
the one that's going around New York City now is what's the big sweepstakes? the one that's been around forever.
The Publishers Clearinghouse.
Yeah. And they're
Yeah.
they're getting phone calls, and another elderly friend of mine got a call and called me up, and she said, I'm rich. I said, you didn't give them anything, did you? So then I Googled it and I said, it says here they will never call you.
That's right.
Oh.
Yeah, notoriously,
just show
right?
up on your doorstep with a
Next day
big
they
check.
called me.
I was gonna say that if they don't have the big check in hand, never. Another question here about emails about discounts. This is a good one. We all get inundated with emails like this every day. Some about even like cheaper items, including something about cheaper airfare. How do you feel about these? Is it better not to click these, or what's kind of your general recommendation when you see some things like this?
These, do they pass the sniff test, right? What's the email address that it's coming from? Have you ordered from them before and you've seen what the email address looks like? It should be pretty quick to spot. Like, if you think about most marketing emails, they've got really robust banners and, it's professionally done. And I'm not saying use that as a rule of thumb, but you should be able to suss out pretty quickly if it's, one line with a link, something like that, and you don't recognize the sender, or there's a name in there, don't click that link.
And I will say, as a marketer and somebody who sends these emails to your inboxes, make sure every legitimate organization that you'll correspond with email will have a footer in the bottom of the email that gives you their address, their phone number, ability for you to opt out. So if you don't see that on an email, that should immediately give you a red flag. Every legitimate business that's sending email is required to by CAN-SPAM law in order to send those emails. So another great indicator to look at there is making sure that they have that. If that's in the bottom of the email, chances are it's going to be a legitimate source, but still proceed with caution.
Hey, Tyler or John, I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding how we as consumers would use the two-tier identification. I see every day how businesses use it, but how would we use it?
Yeah, so most financial institutions especially have that as an option, and Google as well, if you use Gmail or something like that, your email server. So basically, when you set up that two-factor authentication, you're going to sign in with your password, and then they're going to send you a text message. Put a number in there, you type in that number, and they're like, all right, it's Tony. He knows his own password and his email, and we checked with his cell phone that it's him signing into this account. So somebody, if they were trying to hack into that account, would need to have your cell phone and get that text message and punch it in as well. So it's a way to ensure that it's you.
And it's usually only for about 15 or 20 minutes at that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
What about the Google ID?
Did that answer your question, Tony?
Well, I'm not exactly I'm not exactly how I'm clear on how I would use it on my account. So if somebody is writing to me asking me if I wanted to get involved in X club, is that where they need to do the second factor to confirm it?
Oh, no, this is when you're signing into your own accounts at a company like Chase, or signing into your email. Instead of just using your password, it's an additional layer of security to sign into that account.
Okay. So how is there a app to form that?
It's usually done through, like, if you go to your bank's website, there should be, if there isn't, it's not great, but there should be an option for you to add two-factor authentication under the sign-in.
Okay.
And if you find it and you have a trusted banker who has regularly helped you over time, you can go there and they'll show you very quickly. They've shown me some really incredible time-saving ways. Number one, they help me set that up so that anytime you sign into any financial account, your banks, your credit cards, they can help you set this up so that you will have two-factor authentication on all. So if you don't trust going through the computer props, that's an idea.
Yeah, and we use something similar at our offices here with like a password manager where we have to log in twice in order to get a password, and then that's doubly authenticating you as well. So there's just those added layers of security. But if any vendor or company you're working with offers that two-factor authentication, it's best to just go ahead and use it right away, just to make sure that you're keeping your account secure. And then general question here, what do you think about buying online with a credit card, Tyler?
There's some really cool new technology that your credit card can give you like a one-time credit card number. But it's still starting to get more popular. But if you feel like you're on a legitimate website, you shouldn't have too much concern. And credit card companies are actually pretty good at reimbursing you, canceling those payments if it did happen to be fraud. I generally advise people to use a credit card, not a debit card, when online shopping. It's much easier to get that money back with a credit card.
Yeah, and Linda had a great point here around the two-factor authentication. Just being cautious about using text messages or SMS to do that double factor authentication. Sometimes those can be, posed as the bank, but can come from the spammer. So just be on the lookout for that as well. Getting a phone call or authenticating through an app or through another email can be another way to avoid that. Tony had a question here too. We touched on this a little bit in the presentation, but what do you think about insurance to help protect against identity theft?
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile. There's a lot of organizations that you might be part of that'll give you a discount to get something like that, like we do at Retirable. It's worthwhile to have. It's obviously not just hey, I got scammed, send me some money. You do have to go through the process of filing an insurance claim. But I think it's helpful. Like, we live in a digital world where people are trying to take advantage of others, and it's nice to have that protection behind you. I know it can be, if you're buying it yourself without a discount, can be pretty pricey. So I would check, see what any organizations you're part of or anything like that, and see if you can get some.
And another couple points about two-factor here. Seems like a topic that a lot of people have in their minds, but if I'm scammed, what is the process after that? Bank, police, what's kind of the list of things to do when that happens, Tyler?
Yeah, first and foremost, whichever account or wherever you first got that scam, call the legitimate source immediately, tell them everything that's happening, file that claim, or file that report with the police. There's not too much they can do, but you want that documentation, and make sure that it's in the system. And then from there, go change. However they were able to get that information about you to scam you, they could reuse that. So go change those passwords across the board, especially for your financial accounts. Make sure that two-factor set up. And try and deduce how did that happen, and how could I be susceptible to that happening again, and stamp it out before it starts.
And there is a way as like a public watchdog to report this as well. I'll share that address, web address here in the chat. But the FTC is tracking all this and is able to kind of put out notices to make people aware of these scams. I know I was almost a victim to one a couple of years ago, and the first site that I looked at to look into it was the FTC, and they had already kind of run down exactly what people were experiencing, and it really helped me avoid it and then fix some of the issues that I already had. So that's a helpful resource. I'll share that in the chat as well. Yeah, and then following up to Linda, great point. Many businesses have emails that you can report scams to. If it's a legitimate email coming from them, you should see that there, that you can report that. But a lot of people will pose as like a FedEx or Apple or Amazon, and you can actually report that to the corporations themselves to be on the lookout for that. Another question about ongoing credit monitoring and identity monitoring. Which agencies are reliable to do this? I know we work with one here directly at Retirable, but can you speak to some of the value there that those can provide?
Yeah, so technologies getting pretty good on the defense side too. And if it's an organization you trust, you can actually like link up all of your spending, bank accounts, etc. And their technology is going to monitor for something that is not normal, right? They're like, all of a sudden this money's going out. Why is that? They're going to pick up the phone and call you. So there's a lot of cool technology being built in that area. Again, we endorse Careful, great organization, and they have some of that ability as well. But there's a lot of good options out there.
Yeah, and as a reminder, if you do work with Retirable, you get that service included free of charge with our services as well. So another added value there. There's a good question here from Michelle. What should you do if it says someone on the some of your information or a social security number is on the dark web? How do you address that?
Well, I get those all the time, so I think I've become numb to them, so don't follow my example. But that's another one. Hey, what account got hacked that led to that? Everybody thinks about the Equifax breach and that kind of stuff. Ticketmaster was another really big one. But it's a good opportunity for you to rethink that frontline defense of, have I been updating my passwords? Are those passwords secure? Have I set up two-factor authentication? Was I using that same password on different accounts? That kind of stuff. So you should use those as a catalyst to kind of redo your defenses. But once that stuff's out there, it's you can't really, no government agency is going to go get that back for us.
Yeah, and don't try to seek it out yourself on the dark web. You never know. So a couple questions here about the safety of writing checks. Curious what your thoughts are there. And I know, Lori, it looks like you have a question here if you want to ask that directly, but let's talk about checks, Tyler.
Yeah. On one hand, all this financial infrastructure for easy money movement is scary because, we have connectivity to all these banks, whereas it used to only come out when you're writing the check. But checks can also be a little scary when you think about the information that's on those, right? You got your address, your signature, your bank account, and routing number. So, I generally advise against mailing checks, especially with how much lost mail there is. If somebody intercepted that, they've got a lot of information that you don't necessarily want out there. And a lot with ACH and those other types of payment options available, if there is a mistake, if something happens, there is, a grace period there where you can get things pulled back. If you recognize them, wire transfers go out and typically they're gone. But, ACH adds a little layer of safety on top of that a check and a wire don't.
Great.
I mean, to that point about check fraud, I guess one of the checks that we wrote was sort of out there and somebody got it. They forged the next number in the series. Somehow they knew how much money I had in the checking account, and they went to a bank, Wells Fargo, near where I live, tried to cash the check. The teller thwarted it, right? Called me and said, "Are you trying to cash, somebody's here trying to cash a $15,000 check." I was like, "Oh my God, that isn't me." She stopped it, but the police they can't do anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, I filed a report, I talked to the police there, they did a report, it went to the DA's office, and it sits there because it's like, well, she didn't actually get the money. So I guess it's not really urgent compared to all the other things that they have to do. So here's an example of, like, they have this person, they have her picture, they know who she is, they know where she lives. She had my check. It was like, but nothing happened. So, like, FYI, that's kind of like where things end up a lot of the time. I just wanted to bitch about that. That's okay.
No, I mean, yeah. They're just inundated with so many of these all the time.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They're like, be lucky she didn't actually succeed. So, like, shut her away, kind of thing.
Just
Great.
what you want to hear when came back.
I mean, salute to that bank teller that noticed something, though.
Totally.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Totally. I talked to her manager and commended her. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. a great point here by Linda as well. If you're traveling out of the country, best to notify your credit card company so that they don't cut you off when you're out there, leaving you without money or the ability to use your credit. And then, yeah, another great point. Linda's coming strong with the good points here today. The USPS has its own police department that investigates fraud. But even, $500,000 is kind of small potatoes for what they see out there. So a lot of these public services do have fraud departments that are designed to stop that. So there are some resources there. Obviously, it can be a little bit of red tape to get through to those, but definitely worth doing it. If anything, saves yourself and can save a future potential fraud or scam from happening there. Yeah, Bob mentions too, I've frozen the credit bureaus, a lot of hassle to freeze and unfreeze. So yeah, bottom line there is you got to kind of work to keep your money sometimes. And I think, as Tyler mentioned earlier, having, ultimately we are all our own first line of defense when it comes to this stuff, and we have to be vigilant about what we're doing, but there can be second and third lines of defense to help you. And having people that you trust in your corner goes a long way. I know from experience myself, I've been safe from some fraud that way as well. So a lot can be said there. Elise.
One of the things that somebody warned me about, and it's really smart, is to make sure that you don't have automatic memory on your devices to get into your bank. So that, when you open up your iPad and you go to your Chase, it shouldn't be remembering your passwords on your devices that you walk around with publicly. I mean, if it's something that's in your home, but like I carry my mini iPad everywhere and my phone. And my nephew said to me, you should just take all of your automatic recognitions off your devices.
Yeah, companies have gotten a lot better about that, and they don't let people stay signed in. They might let you remember your email address, but they take the password out, and you can make it easy on yourself.
But if the password is on your, if it's on your remembered passwords on your iPad.
Oh, like in the Chrome browser.
Remember me, yeah.
And one additional way to safeguard that is to set up Face ID if that's something you're comfortable with. That way it only processes through if your face is in front of it. I think some of the older iPads as well do a thumbprint. I know there's some folks who don't want to provide that information, but that is an extra layer of security there too, just so nobody can really pose as you.
Okay.
Can you speak to the hide your email comment that is popping up as options when you're asked to put your email information in? Is that worth doing, and what are the risks involved?
Yeah, it's definitely worth doing. You see those actually popped up, I believe, initially as a way to stop getting so much spam advertisements. So when you're buying something online, you could just have a fake email address on there. I think is when people started doing it. I'm not familiar with any risks of doing that. A lot of those you set up like a timeline of how long that email and the forward's active for. So if you were buying something online or something like that, you want to make sure that there's enough time to get updates. But don't have much commentary there. JTL?
Yeah, nothing really to add there. I think if it is an added security feature, I would say go for it. The other thing too is like when you talk about like saving credit card information in certain vendors or sites. If it's not something you're using all the time, where it doesn't really cause much much more seamlessness in the process, like I wouldn't save your credit card information on websites, just because that's how, if there is a breach for one of those websites, that's how your information can get on those large lists. And yeah, Ron, great point here, bringing up password managers. I think there can be some downsides to password managers if somebody gets a hold of that information, but a lot of these are built now to be double or even triple authenticated with you, so that they are very secure. We use one here at Retirable. It's called 1Password, which we swear by. It does a great job for us. I know in the past I've used, I think it was LastPass was one. There are some other vaults and password managers out there that are very reputable. Unfortunately, I think maybe 10 years ago when these first kind of came out, there was one that got breached. So that kind of made the trust in the industry a little bit less than stellar out the gate, but I think they've done a lot of really great things here in the last decade or so to add security there.
I swear by them because it lets me have more secure passwords because I'm clearly not going to remember all the different ones that are out there, and they all get stored in one place. They generate it to make sure it's secure. So it's definitely a big benefit.
So here's my New York City scam story. Born and bred Manhattan. Got in a taxi cab to go downtown. Handed the kit. Put my credit card in the back, in the credit card thing. Cab driver says to me, "Card isn't working. Let me do it. Let me run it up front." Handed my card. Said, "Still not working." Put in, that's a MasterCard. Put in my American Express. Not working. Let me run it up front. Handed my card. Then it's still not working. I pay him in cash. Very crowded Friday night, all the way downtown, $30. Pay him. About 10 minutes later in the restaurant, I get a text from American Express. $300 charge to an auto body shop in Brooklyn. We rejected it because it's not in your pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Picked up, walked out of the restaurant, called MasterCharge. They accepted the charge, and they never gave me credit for it because I had the card in my possession.
That's surprising.
I gave it to him. Well, I mean, we went around for 6 months, and finally I just gave up. But what do you?
That's awful. I'm shocked that happened in a cab. I mean, those guys are licensed and bonded.
Well, I didn't have, you know what? Now I get a receipt every time I go in a cab.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't have any information.
Yeah. Or unless you do it on curb. But the other thing was that they don't have anything up front. He must have been running it on a square up front. So he had a whole scam going in this one cab.
Yeah,
interesting. And as a New Yorker, you just get, what? I got scammed in a cab?
Yeah, it's interesting too that I wonder what the relation, like the fact that it's going to a legitimate business somewhere in the area is probably why MasterCard, didn't really balk at it at first. But yeah, that's clearly fraud. And always a good idea. I say this because I've left my phone in a cab. Remember what your cab number is if you get in a cab somewhere, because you'll never know when you need that information again.
It's not a bad idea to take a picture of the license.
Always a great call. Yep.
And if you get hungry and you're ordering on DoorDash, I had the experience where
well, yeah, I think we've covered every question. Anybody else have any other questions for Tyler?
Good to be back, you guys. Great to see everybody, and nice to see some new faces. And hope to see you guys soon. Stay safe out there, Angela.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you, John. Thank you all for joining today. Hopefully this was a fun session. I left in the chat quick ask to fill out our feedback form for today, as well as if you do want to get in touch with Tyler and John's team, they're offering free consultations to all of our members. So feel free to reach out to them in the link provided in the chat as well. But thank you all for joining.